Okay, thank you. So you can see I'm not Nuno. But I do get the distinct honor of getting to have these three exceptional individuals who've done great work over the years and were part of the MPP program. So thank you all for joining and sharing your stories. So we're thrilled to hear what have you been doing since graduating from the MPP program? Please share a little quick summary of your work. Yeah, start here.
Well, thank you for the invitation, first of all. It's an honor to be here and talk about the great experience I had personally with the MIT Portugal program and beyond. I graduated in 2012 as a PhD student or with a PhD in Sustainable Energy Systems. And since then, I created 3 companies. And worked as a freelancer for quite a while. And now, since 2 years, I'm a product manager at Development Seed. It's a company that is US-based, but has offices in Lisbon. So it's in some ways similar to the MIT Portugal program at that level. In my entrepreneurial efforts, I created one civic tech startup called Co-Urbanize with colleagues that I met in Cambridge while I was a guest student in MIT. That startup is still ongoing. And then I had a consultancy where actually, like during the program, I went a lot into geospatial technology and Earth observation. Then we had a consultancy doing work in that space for a while. And then out of that grew also another company where that I did for 6 years here in Portugal, actually. This one was funded here. We did use Sentinel-2 imagery to monitor forests across Portugal. So we had clients in the Portuguese forestry industry, and we created maps for all of the country on a regular basis. And then that company, we closed it 2 years ago, and now I'm a product manager. And I'm working, that still means I'm doing a lot of hand-on work, and I'm a lead in the AI group at this company, which is a Development Seed, as a software development company with a lot of work for governments, for NGOs and public organizations. And so a lot of our work is in the open. Most of my work I can do in open source. And so now I'm still doing geospatial technology with AI, with Earth observation. And that's really something that I started during the program. That's the story.
I love it. So you have not been up to anything in the last few years.
Not 3 years, exactly.
I love it. Brilliant. Anna.
So now in the right timing. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to join this session. So it's quite nice to see old faces from back in the days. So as Danielle, I graduated also. So I did my PhD in 2012 in the bioengineering area. Since then, so I shifted my career from an academia pathway, let's say, towards a consultancy world. So I started in 2012 already when I was finishing my PhD in an innovation consultant company based in Porto, which is Sociedade Portuguesa de Inovação. So at the time it made sense for me because it allowed me to bring together the expertise that I gained through the PhD and on a more hands-on approach, so allowing me to support companies through funding acquisition process, project implementation, development of strategic studies. So it was a very interesting transition period for me. But then 3 years later, so I was approached by Deloitte to integrate their team as a global incentive and investment consultant, but in Portugal, here in Porto as well. And then I decided to shift my career for a more financial, let's say, perspective. So to close the gap that was missing actually in my profile. But then 3 years after, so in periods of 3 years, then I decided to move back to the academia or to the scientific world, let's say, but still doing what I was doing for the last 6 years. So I joined the International Iberian Nanotechnology Laboratory, which is based in Braga, so probably some of you already know. If not, I invite you to visit, because it's a very interesting infrastructure. But at INL, I don't do research. What I do is I support researchers to seek for funding opportunities. So basically the same thing that I was doing, and the skills that I was developing, but instead of doing it for clients or for our external partners, now I do for my organization and for leveraging the technologies and the scientific work that is done in the labs, from the labs to the market. So that's what I do right now. At the moment, I am the coordinator for national funding at INL, so I oversee all the strategic and the institutional projects that are framed under the national funding ecosystem, but also with some involvement in European projects as well.
Oh, brilliant. So really taking that expertise from the lab to the market and then back to the lab to try and really work through the translational process. Very exciting. Thanks.
Okay, hello everyone, once again. Well, we are all from the same generation. I finished my PhD in 2011, and I follow more an academia pathway. So when I graduated, I joined the faculty as an invited professor. It's a kind of a figure that we have here. I support some lectures for the MIT Portugal and for the Department of Electronics at that time, and so during the phase 2 of the program. Then I became the executive coordinator of the MIT Portugal program during the 3rd phase. So I worked with the coordination office. I was the executive coordinator of the office, and by 2021, I decided to move to a permanent position or a full-time position as a professor at university. So bringing a lot of my experience from the MIT Portugal program and the education that I had during those 15 years, more or less, that I went through the program, and, well, bring it to my students now.
Oh, brilliant. I love that you were part of it and then you ran it,
Yeah.
essentially. So that bodes well for the impact of the program. I'm curious, had you not been, this is kind of going to all of you, had you not been part of MPP, not part of the MIT Portugal program, do you feel like your path would have changed, or can you think of a point whereby it may have triggered a different way of thinking by being part of it and collaborating globally?
Yeah, definitely. We were exchanging a little bit of our experience back there. And so you need to imagine that we started our PhDs around 2007,
Yeah.
around that time. And we were having classes all around the country during our PhD, something completely different from what we do now and what is a traditional model. So for my case, I was like, I have 2 weeks of classes in Minho, for example, and then 2 weeks at home, and then 2 weeks in Porto, 2 weeks at home, 2 weeks on Lisbon. So I basically ran most of the universities, and that experience, well, I think it left me a kind of a brand on myself towards academia, but that experience was something that changed my perspective or my mindset, my view, my even line of thought, and is responsible for what I am today or the way I think today. So not going through the program, if there was, imagine that scenario, for sure, not sure if I would be now a faculty member with these kind of ideas.
I love it, the breadth
Yeah.
of understanding and collaboration. It's brilliant.
So in my case, in addition to what Alexandre was saying, which in my program we also experienced, for me, the most transformative change was right from the start. So in my program, we started having classes in the Nova School of Economics, focused on innovation and entrepreneurship. And during those first 2 weeks, I decided that I wanted to pursue something related with what I do today. And that was reinforced with the BioTeams project, because at the time we had the similar initiative that you had at MIT, so the iTeams,
Yes.
but here they call it the BioTeams. So we had to support researchers. It was actually my project, a research from the University of Coimbra. And so we had to build a go-to-market strategy for that during 1 year. And it was a transformative experience for me. So it was right at that moment that I decided that I was not going to pursue an purely academic based pathway. So, and actually it's interesting because it was there doing the bio teams that I got to know the first company that I worked. So they were the sponsors of the prize. I was successful to win the prize, so that's why it all made sense for me in that first year.
I love this. It's similar yet different. I love this, and I think you're going to add even more to this.
Yeah, for me it's even more transformative, I would say, because I grew up in Switzerland. I'm not Portuguese, and the MIT Portugal program is the reason why I came to Portugal, and I'm still here 15 years later. And so I studied physics in Switzerland, and I was looking for a position abroad, either a job or maybe a PhD. I wanted to do something in sustainability. And really one of the first things that I found online when I was starting to search was the MIT Portugal program. And it just sounded like a perfect opportunity to come to Portugal, to get to know a new country, but also have an exchange with yet another country, yet another culture. And so for me, like just moving here and starting the program was a huge step. And then I think I can second the idea of this entrepreneurship mentality that the program brings. I brought that with me a little bit. So even in high school, I was thinking about making company. But then I think through the learning of being exposed to this international environment, and also the content of what I've been doing since then. So as I said already, I'm very focused on geospatial technology and Earth observation data, so satellite imagery. Those are things I didn't even know existed at some level when I moved here, and only through my PhD I learned about these things. And so when I started freelancing at the end of my PhD, I used the skills that I learned in the PhD. And that also drove the companies that I co-founded. So yeah, and in the MIT Portugal program, when I was in Boston, I met my wife. She was also part of the MIT Portugal program in the bioengineering track. And so
Thank
we have
you,
2
MIT
kids
Portugal.
now. But, I mean,
Transformation beyond
it was very
career.
deep, yes. And I now feel Portuguese as well, so I really couldn't overstate the impact it had.
Clearly. Well, and an excellent example of the power of MIT Portugal being so open to the international student base, and that the Portuguese universities being so open to that international student base, clear impact, and that you're continuing to give back to the Portuguese economy. It's brilliant. So as you have had students, I'm sure, come and ask, how do I do this? What do I do? What are some lessons learned that you might give them if they're thinking about any of these pathways?
If I may. So for me, I think the biggest thing is learn to deal with uncertainty and ambiguity. Because I think that's a big thing for almost any PhD student, but it's also a big thing for entrepreneurs or freelancers. Because if you're taking a job somewhere, then you might have more predictability. But I think in a lot of more innovative areas or untraditional paths, you will be facing a lot of uncertainty and ambiguity. And my analogy for this is the same as if you're in a yoga class and you're holding this like strange position, you're all tensed up, and the yoga teacher says, relax. That's really hard to do because you're in tension and you still need to try to not tense up. And I think that's really how I've been approaching my career, and that's helped me a lot to just look at it like that ambiguity and uncertainty is part of an innovation career, or a career where you try new things all the time. And so accepting that and being resilient to that, I think for me was kind of the biggest thing, and I learned that during the PhD because it was part of it.
I love you bringing this back because I was having a conversation with some of our alums from the innovation workshop, and there is a lot of overlap with doing the PhD and entrepreneurship, where you're trying to do something no one's ever done before. try new learnings, new insights, add to foundational work, add to solving big problems in the world, and there is no roadmap because it's never been done before. So I think that's excellent advice for both, and there is a lot of resilience needed in both of those pathways.
And that it's also not for everybody. I think we can acknowledge that too, that this is something where I don't think we need to push everybody into this direction, but if you have this curiosity, just make sure that you check on yourself and find that balance.
Excellent advice. Mariana.
Getting on your last words, I think that it's important that students or PhD candidates try to explore other, let's say, transferable skills, or it's a pity actually that in the universities, at least in Portugal, we lack some career support offices that can somehow guide the students during their PhD. I think that that would be fundamental. We had that within the MIT Portugal program for sure, but in traditional PhD programs in Portugal, there is not so much that. So I understand that sometimes PhD candidates might think that the only way out is pursuing an purely academic-based path. But if they try to explore other areas, like getting in touch into innovation and entrepreneurship, communication in science, for instance, which is also very important, and it's also an alternative pathway after you finish your PhD, or even, I don't know, policy making, for instance. So there are a lot of opportunities outside, but it's important that you get in touch with them and explore them by your own, or in the first person, that you explore them to understand exactly what you want. Because what I see, and actually being at INL, where we have researchers working, right? So we have some master students and PhD students that sometimes they feel lost. They feel like unmotivated or demotivated, let's say. And with these kind of initiatives, they get the spark. They look for other things. So I think it's important to keep on the curiosity.
I love that. Really taking that onus on yourself to try and reach out. Do you have any pro tips that you might say, okay, besides being part of the MPP program?
Yeah, I think that there are some, we have a lot of online trainings and so on, but it's important that they try to, I would do that if I was on the traditional, let's say, I don't like to say this, but on a PhD program that is not MIT Portugal program, I would probably do that on my own. I will seek for that, or I will I don't know, I will try to see with other friends that are in different areas, because interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary is very important. I would try to do that right from the start.
I love it. Talk to people. Talk to people in other disciplines. And we saw that even with the Marine program.
Yeah, so if you look at, so my example is towards academia, right? So you automatically think that if you want to a position at academia, you need to do a PhD. But there are PhDs and PhDs. So if you go through a normal PhD, I would say maybe you will be a very person with a high expertise in a very focused and narrow topic. And I decided to do the completely opposite. I decided to go to, so my PhD is on Leaders for Technical Industries. It's a program that is completely, in terms of wording, is disruptive. And in my case, it basically widened my perspective on science and technology. And like Mariana was saying about the inputs that come from not only from the technical disciplines that we do have during the courses, but that we did have during the courses, but also those that are like policies and technology policy or innovation that are not that common, show us that at least in the engineering side, everything is cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary. Yes. So I don't want to be focused on one thing. I want to have my eyes quite wide open and to see everything. And we did that through the colleagues that we had during the PhD. So everyone came from different universities, from different backgrounds, and we we did a kind of cross connection with all the PhD programs here. So I know Mariana from early times, but Danielle, we met at a given time. So either at MIT, either in Portugal, we became a community of different backgrounds, different people, different visions, and that made us or create our profile at a given time. It's a legacy that MIT Portugal leaves us.
I love that. Yeah, and I think we've heard that theme kind of repeat itself through both the research collaborations, what the students were doing, the marine program, et cetera. That community means a lot, and it's the diversity of ideas, diversity of disciplines, and diversity of goals, but yet unified by global impact and solving hard problems and solving real problems. Love that. So in our last few minutes, I'm curious, what do you see as the future? And if you were to kind of put out a suggestion or kind of interesting insight from your very different yet interestingly overlapping backgrounds, what might that be? What might you want to inspire this future group to think about? Maybe it's new insights that you're seeing that you are predicting. Maybe it is a pathway, etc.
It's not easy. It's not easy. It's not
Not an easy
question.
one.
So
No.
this was not trained. So
That's exactly. I didn't warn them, by the way.
Definitely.
This is like the magic wand. If you have a magic wand, what would you like to solve in the world?
But I think sometimes we need to be resilient, right? The world and technology, if you want, changes at such rate or such pace that sometimes you cannot foresee 5, 10 years. You can do that exercise, but it will most likely you'll fail on that exercise. So becoming resilient and flexible, and for that you need the right tools, and the right tools can be a variety of stuff. Will allow you to find your position or your site or your place within that uncertainty, because it is hard to foresee what we'll be doing in 5 years or 10 years, because every year something new is coming.
Yes.
It's disruptive. So
Yes. Yeah, the resilience, flexibility, and it sounds like also kind of keeping open eyes to seeing those opportunities as they arise, perhaps unexpected.
Yeah. It's a little bit unfair because Danielle just mentioned everything on his first approach. So resilience, flexibility, I think that...
Do yoga.
Yeah.
That's what I got. Okay, I need to do more yoga.
No, but I think that's the main point. Don't give up and don't be stuck with your research topic, for instance, because sometimes we see that people don't want to let go their baby, but it's important that we are flexible and we keep evolving. And look for other opportunities apart from an academia.
Much like you did.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like you've really continued to push yourself to learn and then see areas where you might be able to add to that particular discipline.
Yeah, it's possible to keep on following the research and the science without doing research. So that's the way. That's my let's say advice.
The foundational skills are a lot more global than one might even think. Yes, excellent.
I think I want to take this a bit to very concrete advice.
I love it.
About tooling. So one of the things that I did during my PhD, kind of consciously, out of principle but also out of practicality, is that I used open source software as much as I could. Although the university would offer commercial software that might be even, a bit easier to use in the beginning, and so also in my entrepreneurship work, we betted a lot on open data. And with the company I'm now also, it's a company that does almost everything in open source and many things on open data. And so, especially during the PhD, I think if you learn to use software as an example, or standards, or data, if you can choose, even if it's a bit on a longer, steeper learning curve in the beginning, the more you choose open tools, the more you'll be able to use them afterwards. And this is also in terms of, sustainability and helping the world. I think it's really a different thing also if you contribute the community around open source projects or open data or etc., and open models, etc. Open science, really. That's such a fascinating community that also is a bit in the spirit of the MIT Portugal program, where people just work together, and there's no fear of I can't talk about this, or I shouldn't be doing that. And when you leave the program, when you leave the university, you can continue using the same tools. And so that's a maybe very overly specific advice, but this is
Excellent advice. Do that.
that I would give, yeah.
This is excellent. Well, thank you all for sharing your experiences. I love the theme of community exploration, continuing to keep your eyes open for how you can impact change. And you've all done such great work in doing exactly that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.